Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm Annika Isagary. I am Communications Director with the Committee to Protect Healthcare. We appreciate you taking time out of this very busy, devastating day to hear from physicians in the state of Georgia about how this ruling from the Supreme Court will impact their patients and all Georgians. As a reminder, we ask that you please only identify the physicians as they were identified in the media advisory, or as they choose to identify themselves. Please don't identify them by their employers unless they indicate that that is okay. We are recording this press conference, so if you'd like a copy of the recording, please send me an email and I will send that to you this afternoon after the call concludes. But without further ado, I will introduce Dr. St. Louis to begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Didi St. Louis. I am an OBGYN here in Atlanta, and I have been practicing in Atlanta since 2006. I am here with my colleague to strongly condemn the U.S. Supreme Court decision this morning to overturn Roe v. Wade, and I do so on behalf of my colleagues as well as my patients. As a physician, I am greatly disappointed in the Supreme Court ruling and very concerned about the fact that it's going to strip federal protections for abortion access, not just for women across the United States, but specifically for women in Georgia. Without the constitutional right to an abortion, which our patients have had for almost 5 decades, many women will find it difficult or nearly impossible to access the care that they need in order to live their lives in a way that is healthy and in a way that abides by their personal decisions. The Supreme Court has essentially given states the permission to place severe restriction on abortion access and essentially given them permission to outright ban abortion access. It's especially concerning here in Georgia because we know that we have extremist politicians who have already been working to take away abortion access for years, and they were just waiting for the green light, so to speak. Abortion is safe. It is part of normal reproductive health care for individuals. It will always be an essential part of healthcare for patients who need to be able to have autonomy over their bodies and control over their lives. As a physician, we continue to do our best to connect our patients with the care that they need, to support them and provide them with the counseling and information that they need so they can make best decisions for their lives where they are in that moment. We trust that our patients know their body and know exactly what they need in order to have a healthy and safe life. However, our extremist politicians are working overtime to criminalize this healthcare and to take away access to legal abortion in our states and possibly across the country. We are truly at a crisis moment. Access to abortion here in Georgia and in many neighboring states can be wiped out overnight. Politicians have now the go-ahead to block access to healthcare that people have always needed and will always need. We must call on our elected officials to cease their attack on abortion access and instead work to protect it and expand it. As a physician in Georgia, myself and my colleagues stand not only with our patients, but with our colleagues across the states. And we want to make sure that our voices are heard and that our patients' voices are heard and that their rights are protected. I now turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Mimi Zieman.
Dr. Zieman, you're still on mute. I'm still on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we're good.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Dr. St. Louis. I'm Dr. Mimi Zieman. I've been an OBGYN for 33 years and the author of Managing Contraception, and I'm a woman who chose when to become a mother. The decision about whether or not to carry an unexpected pregnancy to term is a deeply personal one, and a woman seeking an abortion should be able to receive compassionate care, guided by unbiased medical information, rather than political agendas and one-size-fits-all laws. Complex and personal decisions such as these are part of the private doctor-patient relationship, which is fundamental to good and ethical healthcare. We're all here because we agree there's no place for judges or politicians in the exam room. That's why we're very concerned about the Georgia abortion law that Governor Brian Kemp signed in 2019. While previously blocked by the courts, the Supreme Court's decision today opens the way for its implementation. This law prohibits a pregnant person from getting an abortion at around 6 weeks, when many women may have just missed their period and don't even know they are pregnant. That law also gives personhood rights to embryos. So make no mistake about it, these politicians are interfering with all women's health, including fertility treatments like IVF and contraception. Georgians who find themselves pregnant after 6 weeks will be forced to travel, likely many states away, to get the care they need, if they can afford to, creating a great burden, especially to people with lower incomes and jobs that don't give them time off. Those who cannot travel will be forced to remain pregnant or to self-manage their abortions. It is deeply disturbing to us as physicians that lawmakers and judges would burden the lives of women to such a degree. When women are burdened, children and families suffer. It's unconscionable that both our Supreme Court justices and state leaders, mostly men I might add, would try to take away our patients' bodily autonomy and control over their health. Abortions are a safe, normal, and integral part of reproductive health care. For many patients, they are vital to overall health and well-being. The American Medical Association, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American College of Nurse Midwives, the American College of Family Physicians, and many other professional medical associations agree. At least 24 of these organizations have signed a letter opposing bans against abortions. As physicians, we trust our patients to know what is best for their bodies and their lives. In fact, we take oaths. The Hippocratic Oath is about respecting patients' autonomy. We'll continue to do all we can to assure they have the freedom to make their own decisions. And I'd like to invite Dr. Becker to speak now.
Thank you, Dr. Zieman. My name is Dr. Nadine Becker. I'm a practicing gynecologist for 27 years in the Atlanta area, and I'm here to condemn the decision by the Supreme Court. As we've said, abortion is health care. Just like all other forms of health care, access to abortion shouldn't depend on where you live or how much money you make or have. But without federal protections for abortion access, Georgians who are able will be forced to travel across state lines, likely at high costs, to get the care they need. Others who aren't so fortunate will be forced to carry unexpected pregnancies to term, putting their health, well-being, and even their lives at stake. And I heard with this ruling, it has been predicted that the maternal mortality will increase in the first year nationally by 7%, and in the coming years by 21%. And those stakes are especially high in our state. The United States has the worst maternal care and highest maternal mortality rate among similarly developed countries. Georgia is unfortunately the most dangerous state for pregnant women in terms of maternal death rates. And our atrocious maternal mortality rate is actually worsening. The fact is, pregnancy and delivery are much more physically risky than having an abortion. That's especially true for people of color. Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy complications than white women nationally. Black women are also more likely to suffer from hypertension. Hypertensive diseases of pregnancy and pre-existing hypertension contribute to the risk of preeclampsia, stroke, and cardiovascular disease, which are the leading causes of maternal deaths in Georgia. There are other risks too. By forcing someone to be pregnant, politicians are preventing people in abusive relationships from being able to get out and be safe. People who are denied an abortion experience worse mental health and economic outcomes than those who are able to receive care. Nobody should be forced to be pregnant and take on these risks if they don't want to be. We fear that without action to expand abortion access from our state leaders, many Georgians will die unnecessarily. We urge our lawmakers to protect lives and families by stopping their attacks on abortion access.
Thank you so much, Dr. Becker, and thank you, Dr. Zieman and Dr. St. Louis. We will now open it up for questions. If you have a question for one or any of the physicians, please feel free to use the Q&A function to ask that, or you can type your question in the chat box, and we will do our best to ensure that all of them get answered. So I'll give a few moments for people to be able to type those. Ariel, I can unmute you. You can ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for doing this. So this is a question for any of the physicians. First of all, do you specifically, any of you, perform abortions? And if not, can you speak to your interest in this? One of you mentioned the rate of maternal mortality, and how might this affect women who maybe didn't wouldn't have been particularly concerned about abortion except for some other medical issue that, we may not as non-medical public understand? Is that a clear question?
I think I can start to answer your question. So my concern or my interest in this is that I'm a OBGYN generalist practitioner. I am also a reproductive health advocate, which is why I work with the Committee to Protect Health to ensure that we are providing accurate and up-to-date information to the public as well as to the press in regards to reproductive health and reproductive health access. And as an OBGYN, a generalist OBGYN, I can tell you that people often forget that access to safe abortion care is not just for women who choose to terminate the pregnancy because they find that this is not the right time in their lives and for their family to carry a pregnancy to term, but it also affects women who have had pregnancies in the past that culminated in poor outcomes and who have chronic medical illnesses. And for these women, being pregnant, it puts their lives at risk. And as such, when we talk about access to abortion care, we have to understand that for some women, this comes down to making their worsening their health outcomes. And so, when we think about it, a lot of times I think we forget that this is not, that abortion care is not something that is standalone. It is part of reproductive health care, that it is safe and it must be made available to women in order for them to make the decisions that they have to make when they do become pregnant. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, if you could give an example of that might help.
An example as far as a situation?
Yeah, a situation where a woman, where pregnancy could endanger her life. I think you had mentioned or
absolutely. So off the top of my head, I can think of women who have chronic or end-stage renal disease because of preeclampsia or chronic hypertension. Women who have a history of preeclampsia, which is a form of severe hypertensive disease in pregnancy, who were forced to have to deliver that severely premature babies, and for whom late subsequent pregnancies could result in a repeat of the same thing with severe preeclampsia. So those are just two of the most common situations here in Georgia, particularly in women of color, individual of color, who tend to have a higher rate of preeclampsia, higher rate of preterm delivery, and of course those are associated with worse maternal morbidity and mortality as well.
Thank you so much.
I just would like to add, yes, that this has grave consequences for women who have desired pregnancies. And you asked for our interests. I'm the former director of family planning at Emory. So I used to be in charge of training for contraceptive research and abortion care. And like Dr. St. Louis, I'm a reproductive health advocate. Women who have desired pregnancies have many complications that require terminating the pregnancy. For example, if a woman ruptures her membrane before the baby's viability, she needs a procedure very much like an abortion. And this kinds of laws are really freaking our profession out because they are afraid that they are going to intervene to protect the woman's health. Sometimes it's under the guise of saving the health of the mother, if that's the only exception that applies in a certain state, and they feel at risk of criminalization. So, you know, there are many aspects of desired pregnancies that are going to be negatively impacted by OBGYN's fear of care and being able to perform the right and optimal care in an efficient time.
And so that was my follow-up question now. What will happen in those cases?
Well, it's going to be the wild, wild west for a while, because bottom line is that many of these scenarios and situations will be fought between, you'll have a patient and a terrible situation and a doctor recommending something and a court potentially stepping in. And these are going to be even more harrowing situations, again, on top of harrowing situations.
Thank you.
As Dr. Becker said, women will die as a result of this. And so the Supreme Court, who are motivated by religious ideology to protect life, are harming women. Clearly harming women.
We have a question in the chat from Emily. Could any of you speak to what access to healthcare looks like for a low-income family with children, and the overall costs of a pregnancy and giving birth?
So currently, what access to care would look like for a low-income family. If they qualify for federal aid, their prenatal care would be provided through that, and it will cover prenatal care and delivery. And here in the state of Georgia, will also cover postpartum care for up to about 6 to 12 months. That's assuming that the pregnancy is an uncomplicated, straightforward pregnancy. When women have complications because no pregnancy is straightforward and the cost now increases tremendously, generally we know that healthcare bills, healthcare expenditure generally are one of the first reasons why individuals go into bankruptcy or accumulate further debt. And so while we know that there is some federal aid to cover prenatal care and delivery, as well as postpartum care here in the state of Georgia, there is some state help as well. That is assuming that a pregnancy is uncomplicated. Once there are any complications, the expenditure increases and thus becomes an undue burden for those families.
Great question. Thank you, Emily. I am not seeing any other questions at this time, so we will go ahead and conclude our call. Oh, one more question maybe? Oh, nope, all set. So thank you everyone from the media for attending today. Again, I know it's a really busy day and we appreciate your time. And thank you so much to the physicians for sharing your views on this really devastating ruling today, and for your advocacy for your patients. Thank you, Dr. Zieman, Dr. Becker, and Dr. St. Louis. And I hope you all have an okay rest of the day.
Thank you. Same to you.
Record.